Now it's time to head up to Yorkshire and catch up with Simon George. He's either an absolute modelling genius or a modelling madman. I still really can't make up my mind about it. And if you've not come across Simon before, Simon is the man behind Britain's biggest model railway, Heaton Lodge Junction. So, hello, Simon.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
All right, yeah. So,
nice intro.
There may be some people out there, Simon, that don't actually know about you and this project that you've undertaken. So, when did you start it, and what gave you the idea?
Well, it was back in 2013, Andy, that I actually started it. And what gave me the idea was just the fact that I used to go down to the real place as a kid and spent all my school holidays there from probably when I was 11 to about 15. And I just got to know the area really, really well. But the main reason for going down there was just to sit next to the tracks and watch big, heavy coal trains trundling past. And yeah, so I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but I just wanted to recreate the place that I went to as a child. It wasn't really so much a model railway as I just wanted to recreate the landscape, which is why I spent so much time on the scenery side of things. But it just meant working very fast. Otherwise, I'd be, 85 by the time I finished it. So you probably remember good old Alan Downs. He was a well-known prolific model maker, especially buildings, and he taught me all sorts of ways to really crack on but still retain the detail but move really fast. And so I just decided to create it on a grand scale. Really, it was just a coincidence, Andy, that it had a model railway running through it. But I love railways, don't get me wrong, but it could have easily been the local park or the local beach, but it just happened to be a railway. So that's where it all came from.
You've used a couple of words in there, landscape and grand scale. So
yeah,
anybody who's not encountered Heaton Lodge Junction yet, what are the numbers, obviously, on the length of it and the size of this thing?
Well, it's actually 200 feet long down two sides. So it's basically a rectangle. The scenic side is 196 feet, including the curves at each end. And then we've got a fiddle yard, which also covers the same area. The fiddle yard's actually 150 feet with some space at either end. And it needs a space of about 60 foot wide to fit in. And that compromises about 100 5-foot by 4-foot square sections, which all obviously bolt together. Well, they just clip together, and all the electrics underneath, clip together too. So those are the basic measurements. Yeah.
So 196 foot across the. I know that if you stand down at one corner, and even in O gauge, and look down to the other end, you can barely see the loco. All you can see is a yellow block in the distance. And I think that's what you were looking to capture.
That's exactly what I wanted to capture, Andy, yeah. Because when I was a kid, I think we can all relate being modelers and train spotters maybe when we were younger. Even some people still do it today. It's not quite as much fun. But anyway, yeah, it was just the case. I wanted to recreate that anticipation that you get when you see the lights of a Class 56 or a 40, coming from a mile and a half away. And then you're thinking, what is it? And then you can hear the rails singing and all the rest of it. And the only way to do that is to build it big. And so that is really the drive behind making it as big as it is. That is simply it in a nutshell.
But often out there in the world, when something's the biggest, it's not necessarily the best.
Yeah.
I will say that there are so many aspects to your model that I think make it one of the best O-gauge layouts that anyone can actually tackle. And who are all this huge team that are behind, obviously, producing this 200-foot long model?
Well, you're looking at the main guy. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there was two companies that really helped with the frames, because there's no way I could have built all the frames and the woodwork, because they needed laser cut technology, which obviously I haven't got. So White Rose Model Works up in Bedale made the kind of 2/3 of the model itself, the frames that is. and Tim Horn made the really complicated frames, which probably total the last third of the layout, but by far the most complicated part, where you've got gradients, lines on different gradients next to each other. So those are the two main, teams are behind me making the frames. Apart from that, some of the track was made initially by a chap, especially the point work, which was on the scenic side. The point work is scale length point work, and so it needed really precise working, which I've got to be honest, track making is just, I just couldn't do it. But everything else, yeah, I just learnt myself. I practiced for at least, I think, about 11 months before I started building the layout. And so I really wanted to hit the ground running, Andy. I just wanted to hit the ground, make the static grass, which of course is a huge aspect to that layout. Learn how to make the civil engineering on the buildings, the stonework and everything else on the bridges, of which there's many. So when I started, I kind of had accumulated all those skills. And so it wasn't a case of, what I wanted to avoid was the layout being pretty basic at one end and then much better at the other end. I just wanted a really wide expanse of consistent modelling all the way from start to finish.
Yeah, but one thing is that the layout's that long enough, I swear the weather changes from one.
Yeah, you could be right. Be right. I mean, do you know what? I have looked at kind of wrapping around a back scene, so it actually encompasses the above you as well. So you're actually looking into and having some sort of fog or smoke a bit. Because when I used to go down there as a kid to the real Heaton Lodge junction, you often got hit with all the fog and the mist, and I'd love a way of recreating, the trains coming through the mist, and I'm working on all sorts of different ways of doing that, but yeah, we'll see in the future where we go from there.
Yeah, the first layout with its own microclimate. Absolutely.
That'd be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's got to be done.
Yeah. So, I mean, for readers, I will say that 99% of the real modelling on this is down to you, Simon, and that is a massive achievement. And no, you couldn't have built all of that track yourself. How much track have you actually used?
Oh, it's a good question. I mean, Pico have been really kind. Ben Arnold at Pico, I would say, really kind of was really enthusiastic about this, because he knew I was going to be using a lot of their track, albeit a lot of their track is standard, but I've just spaced the sleepers to a bit more of the British scaling between the spaces between the sleepers. So it's modified Pico off-the-shelf track. So yeah, to answer your question, I think about 60 boxes of O-gauge track. Do you know what? I've never even counted it up. I don't even want to count it up, because I don't even want to know how much it's cost. So yeah, I think I'd guess about 60 to 70 boxes of O-gauge track.
Because I swear you actually contributed to the lockdown shortage of track as you
yeah.
down the western end of the layout.
Yeah.
But what you have actually achieved, because you were working originally towards taking it to Worley Show, whereas in last minute panic mode. But the important thing is, you would have actually met that time frame in terms of obviously having it a viable, completed running model.
Yeah, I mean, it was running a couple of weeks ago in its entirety, all 4 tracks, all 28 roads of the fiddle yard. I should say there's 4 fiddle yards, because each of the 4 main lines has its own fiddle yard, which is approximately 50 foot long. But yeah, everything was working, Andy. So it would have just given me big panic modes, as I said earlier, breaking it down especially. But yeah, no, it would have been done.
So how would you have got it down to the NEC?
How much what?
How would you have got it down to the NEC?
3 articulated trucks, each with double deckers inside and a tail lift at the end. Yeah. So I had to have built 47 hand carts, which are bespoke. So basically these hand carts are a bit like, how can I describe them? 4-wheel trolleys, but the two decks, the top deck lifts off, so you can get two of the frames on, one on the bottom deck, and then when you put the deck on the top, you can put another frame on the top of those. And then there's different designs for the different sized frames, and they all push onto a tail lift of a truck. The truck tail lift lifts up and straight into the back of the wagon, and that's basically how it works.
So you know, to have been a logistics manager as well as a master modeler.
Well, fortunately, that was my previous business. Yeah, I used to run events, so I do know attention to detail is so important in getting a really slick operating process. Because if you got the detail in place, Andy, it'll work okay. But if you get it wrong, it can be really stressful and pretty horrific, really. So I just wanted to get things right from the beginning.
And I think one of the challenges would have been obviously an operating team and operating sequence, actually keeping everything rolling. I'm sure
that's right.
you had some sort of like barrier hangers saying, oh, there was nothing moving when I was there. But like the real location, you've got to wait a bit and obviously see what comes.
Yeah, well, that isn't the case with this, because that's one thing I really wanted to avoid. So I've got two great guys, Jonathan and Rob, who just come up to West Yorkshire every week, bless them, and they work on making this automated. So literally with the flick of a switch, the whole thing will work in automatic, with scale length block distances between the trains. The signals change, or should I say, when the points move, they change the signals, put the feathers on for the particular colour light signals, and the trains are constantly coming past. So there'll be far more traffic at the model of Heaton Lodge than what there would have been even at the busy times of the real Heaton Lodge. But I think it's so important to get things moving. But one thing, Andy, is because it's so long, you can always see something coming. It might be a scale 1 mile away, but you look left or you look right, you'll see the lights of something coming. So really, it needs to keep people's interest. And because this wasn't just aimed at fellow modelers, it's really aimed at the general public as well. And so with them, they're not like us, really. They kind of don't know much about trains. They just want to see big trains rumbling past with smoke and all the rest of it. So it's a bit of an entertainment thing. So it was really important to keep all these trains running constantly.
Yeah. It's certainly a spectacle, and there, as you say, about the general public, obviously the intention after Worley would have been taking this out to high footfall locations,
Correct,
places around the country. Obviously, that as a grander plan is on hold at the present time, isn't it? But
it is, yeah, it is. I mean, as you say, the grand plan was taking it to a lot of the British home stores, which had shut down, putting it in those places, as you said rightly, in places of high footfall, but only in summer holidays, Christmas holidays, when loads of families are around, and making a small entrance charge so they can come and watch. But as you again rightly say, that's gone out the window because of COVID. So what I'm doing now is converting the whole basement where the layout is into a really good quality live streaming venue. So we've got zip wires that follow the trains all the way down the 200 foot of the main lines. We've got GoPro cameras at different points, so you can actually follow trains round. We've even got we've got cameras in the loco cabs. So if you want to you can follow, a class 40 with a huge train of HUOs behind it, or Helgian cargo wagons, and you can follow it all the way around the layout. So that's basically what's going on at the minute, Andy.
So that's a big technical challenge to bring all of that together.
Unfortunately, I've got two guys, as I said, Rob and Jonathan before, who without them, I just wouldn't know where to start. Mine would be steam powered, my cameras. I just wouldn't know where to start. But it's really important that the quality's right and that you can see these trains in their entirety, because that's what it's all about. And people just want to see trains, and big ones at that.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to seeing that in due course. So obviously you're creating your own pay-per-view movie channel here, the entertainment of the hobby. When we can't get out and about over the winter. So you're going to give us something different. So When do you anticipate being able to do that?
I think it's probably the end of the year now, the end of the year before we get everything in place, because I don't want to launch any sort of live streaming, as I said before, until the quality's there. You know, it's going to be free for a while, so people can just log in. We'll have a list of events, whether it's a video on making static grass, of which I've kind of used about 3 bin liners full, or it's just a running session where people can watch the train from different angles. We'll have a list and a schedule of all these different events, and so people can just log on and just watch them at their leisure.
That'll be great to see. I mean, one thing that we've seen recently on the layout is Helgen's running samples of the Class 56.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you reckon?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, people are going to say he's biased because Helgen sponsored the layout, and of course they do. But the reason for that is simply because that layout needs working locomotives that are capable of hauling big, long trains for hours at a time. And so Helgen's products, with them being really heavyweight, because they are, I mean, you've lifted them yourself, they're like doorstops, but they're so detailed and they're just great for that layout. So the 56, to answer your question, I always was a bit worried that any company making the 56 in O gauge is going to get the face of that loco right, because it's so difficult to get, because as you probably know, the windows, they're not square, they're just got little round corners. It's just difficult to get right. But I have to say that 56 is spectacular, and it pulled 50 loaded HAAs. That's a 50 strong merry-go-round train for about 7 hours just the other day, and that's the new 56 sample from Helgen. So, you know, it's obviously going to do the job.
Yeah. Now, I mean, obviously, there you are. You're very much an interest end of the 70s into the 80s on there. But it's not just about diesels as well. That
no,
you were appeal to the kettle fans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are 2 locomotives which are going to do the charter services, of which during the 80s, many will probably remember the Evening Star, the 9F, that's now in the National Railway Museum. We used to go past up and down doing a lot of charters, probably between about 81 and 85. So I've got a 55 H brass version of of Evening Star, which belches smoke out and everything. So that's going to be doing charters. And there's also going to be probably an A4. I'm not sure which yet, but an A4 coming in the other direction as well. So I would, and I'll not rule this out. In the future, I will be doing complete steam days. So we've got Heaton Lodge goes back to 1965 or whatever, and just have you know, your 264s and your standard class 4s, black 5s, jubilees, and everything else. It's just that, of course, the track plan back in the 60s was not like it is now. But you know, hey ho, I think we still be great to see steam.
Oh yeah, we could forgive that, and obviously, as you say, obviously, wouldn't it be great, obviously, if you get locos that have got that volume of output of steam and smoke?
Absolutely,
that you actually see that into the distance, sort of 200 foot away as well.
Yeah, it's funny, Andy, because I've got some footage of Heaton Lodge in the 1960s with a Stanier 8F on a coal train, and it's going towards the Calder Valley, towards Lancashire, through Heaton Lodge. And he's literally going at walking pace, because that gradient is 1 in 130. So it's really struggling to get up that gradient, because it's a long gradient over it's a bit like the long drag on the Settle Carlisle line. It's, you know, it's a great gradient. And so, yeah, I'd love to see that with the smoke belching out, and it'd just be great to see, wouldn't it? So I'll never rule that out either. It just, you can only do one thing at a time, obviously.
Absolutely, but you do keep everybody on RMWeb up to date with regular updates, whether it be from the colour of the water in your sewage works through to the latest being, well, you need sort of like empty MGRs, obviously, sort of like heading west or vice versa. Sorry. I mean, people really get into the nitty gritty of this.
Oh, they do, you know, and that's fine. I mean, I never mind criticism, as long as it's, as you know, from a constructive viewpoint. And there's people on RMWeb who do come on and point out, you know, mistakes I've made. and 90% of them are really kind, and they'll say fantastic layout, you know, but this, but that, and that's great. I don't mind at all. I think we all just get a little needled occasionally by people who you never hear of until you make a mistake, and then they're straight in there. And I think that's, you know, that's just a bit uncalled for occasionally. But
Yeah, you really
hey,
did,
you know,
like saying sort of like, well, show us yours then. Yeah, where's your
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but I have to say, you know, on RMWeb, a lot of the guys on there have been, you know, hugely supportive over the years. There's probably a bunch of 20 or 30 that are on there a lot. And then they never offer anything but great support. And I am grateful to them because, you know, there's been some, how do we say, dark days down there in that basement, sometimes on, well, mostly on your own. Yeah, it's great sometimes to come back, and people obviously appreciate from going on RMWeb that what you're doing. And so it does give you a spur, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I've been lucky enough to see this from the earliest stages, some of your early trades, working on things on the junction, or from sort of like the eastern end and the bridge and the gantry there, through where you are now, where you've got this up and running. Yeah, you've still got sort of like some scenic bits to do down by the we'll forgive you that one. And obviously, you have got plans for the future. And you're also sharing what you do. So I really, really do take my hat off to you, Simon.
Thanks, Andy. No, it's really appreciated. I think, yeah, I am writing a book, which is going to be a nice old coffee table book, which will be released sometime in the middle of next year, which kind of gives the background. And it's going to flip between how to, and I don't want to sound pompous saying how to, it's just because I've done it so much, you kind of get quite good at it. So it's going to be how to do the, you know, perfect static grass if you want that washed out look. And then it's going to flip to the real place, and then another chapter on the background of Heaton Lodge. And so it should be a nice old coffee table book to read, you know, when you've not much else to do.
Yeah, stick me down for one of those. Anyway.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Anyway, right. I know you've got stuff to get on with. Really appreciate you spending a bit of time with us this weekend to give us a bit of an update. Take care of yourself through lockdown period, and at least you can come on online and talk to us all.
Likewise. Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, all the best.